The crimson moon of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the battlefield as the last of the plasma fire died away. Smoke rose from countless craters where energy weapons had scorched the alien soil. Commander Zethrak of the Galactic Coalition forces stood among the debris, his scaled hide gleaming under the strange light. Around him, his mixed-species unit gathered their wounded and prepared for evacuation. The Coalition had won this skirmish against the rebel forces, but victory always came with a price. Zethrak's amber eye swept across his troops, counting heads and assessing damage. His unit was one of the most diverse in the Coalition military, a testament to the unity that kept their vast empire together. There were the crystalline Vortons, whose bodies could deflect energy weapons, the tentacled Makari who served as excellent scouts, and several other species that had pledged their loyalty to the Coalition cause. Then, there was Fenris. The werewolf soldier lay crumpled behind a fallen tree, his massive form barely moving. Dark blood matted his silver fur, and his usually keen yellow eyes were glazed with pain. Fenris had been their heavy assault specialist, capable of tearing through enemy lines with supernatural strength and speed. But now he was nothing more than dead weight. "Sir," called Lieutenant Vex, a Mortman with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms. "The transport ships are arriving. We need to move out before rebel reinforcements show up." Zethrak nodded, then looked down at Fenris. The werewolf had taken a direct hit from a plasma cannon while protecting a squad of Makari scouts. The blast had shattered his left leg and burned through his chest armor. In his hybrid form, Fenris stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed over 300 pounds. Moving him would require significant resources. "What about the wolf?" asked Sergeant Corval, a reptilian saurian whose species prided themselves on efficiency above all else. Zethrak studied Fenris for a long moment. The werewolf's breathing was shallow and labored. His injuries were severe, possibly fatal without immediate medical attention. But their transport capacity was limited, and they had already lost 2 ships in the battle. Taking Fenris would mean leaving behind valuable equipment and supplies. "He's too badly injured," Zethrak decided, his voice carrying no emotion. "The medical bay on our ships can't handle trauma this severe. Even if we got him back to base, the chances of survival are minimal." Fenris's ears twitched at the commander's words, but he was too weak to protest. He had served the Coalition faithfully for 6 years, ever since his pack had been recruited from the frontier world of Luna Prime. He had bled for the Coalition, killed for them, watched friends die in their name. And now, when he needed them most, they were going to leave him behind. "But, sir," Vex protested, "he's one of us. We don't abandon our own." "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one," Zethrak replied, quoting Coalition military doctrine. Fenris knew the risks when he signed up. "We all did." The other soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Many of them had fought alongside Fenris for months or even years. They had seen him drag wounded comrades to safety under enemy fire, had watched him single-handedly hold off entire squads of rebels to buy them time to escape. But they also understood military necessity. As the transport ships landed in a clearing 50 meters away, Zethrak gave the order to move out. One by one, his soldiers filed past Fenris without making eye contact. Some whispered apologies under their breath. Others simply looked away. The werewolf watched them go with growing despair, understanding that his 6 years of loyal service meant nothing when weighed against tactical convenience. The last to leave was Corporal Thys, a young Makari who Fenris had saved during her first battle. Her tentacles trembled as she knelt beside him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her translator collar converting her chemical signals into audible words. "This isn't right." Fenris managed to lift his head slightly and gave her what might have been a smile. "Go," he rasped through damaged vocal cords. "Live to fight another day." Thys reluctantly rose and hurried after the others. Soon, Fenris was alone on the battlefield, listening to the fading hum of the transport engines as they carried his former comrades away. The Coalition forces that he had served so faithfully had abandoned him to die among the rocks and twisted metal. The werewolf tried to push himself upright, but pain shot through his shattered leg and burned chest. He collapsed back to the ground, panting heavily. Even in his hybrid form, his supernatural healing was barely keeping him alive. Without medical treatment, he would be dead within hours. As the night deepened, strange sounds began to echo across the battlefield. The rebel forces were known to take prisoners when they could, and their treatment of coalition soldiers was notoriously brutal. Fenris had seen the aftermath of rebel interrogation camps, bodies twisted by exotic torture devices, minds broken by alien narcotics that left victims conscious but insane. He reached for his sidearm with a shaking hand, checking the energy cell. One shot left. Enough to deny the rebels their prize, if he could find the courage to use it. But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the stubborn hope that his pack nature wouldn't let die easily. Perhaps it was simple fear of the unknown that lay beyond life. Hours passed. The crimson moon tracked across the alien sky, and Fenris drifted in and out of consciousness. In his fevered dreams, he ran free across the forests of Luna Prime with his pack, before the coalition had recruited them with promises of honor and brotherhood that had proven hollow. It was during one of these dreams that he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. His eyes snapped open, and he fumbled for his weapon. The steps were too heavy to be one of the smaller alien species, but too quiet to be wearing the heavy combat armor favored by coalition forces. A rebel patrol, perhaps, or scavengers looking to strip the dead. A figure emerged from the shadows between the twisted remains of a destroyed hover tank. Fenris's vision was blurry from blood loss, but he could make out a bipedal form of roughly human proportions. The stranger wore what appeared to be salvaged armor pieces over simple clothing, and carried an energy rifle that looked like it had seen better days. As the figure drew closer, Fenris could see more details in the crimson moonlight. It was indeed human, a species that most coalition worlds considered primitive and barely worth noticing. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century, and their technology was considered crude by galactic standards. Most served in support roles when they served at all, handling logistics and maintenance that more advanced species found beneath them. This human was male, probably in his 30s, with dark hair and a weathered face that spoke of long experience in dangerous places. A series of scars traced across his left cheek, and his brown eyes held the hard look of someone who had seen too much violence. He moved with the careful precision of a professional soldier, checking corners and maintaining awareness of his surroundings even as he approached what appeared to be a dying alien. Well, the human said softly, his voice carrying a slight accent that Fenris couldn't place. What do we have here? Fenris tried to raise his weapon, but his arm was too weak. The pistol slipped from his fingers and clattered against the rocks. The human could have killed him easily at that moment, but instead he knelt down and began examining Fenris's injuries with what seemed like genuine concern. Coalition forces, the human asked, noting the insignia on Fenris's damaged armor. Fenris nodded weakly, expecting the human to finish him off. Humans had no love for the coalition, which had classified their species as minor participants in galactic affairs and generally treated them with condescension when they bothered to acknowledge them at all. But, instead of reaching for a weapon, the human began pulling medical supplies from his pack. "My name's Marcus Chen," he said as he worked. "Former coalition medic, currently employed by whoever pays best. And you, my furry friend, look like you could use some help." "Why?" Fenris managed to croak out the single word. Marcus paused in his examination of the werewolf's injuries. "Because leaving someone to die when you can help them makes you less human. And I've worked very hard to stay human out here." The irony wasn't lost on Fenris. His own species, along with all the others in his unit, had abandoned him without a second thought. But this human, a member of a species that the coalition barely considered worthy of notice, was willing to risk his own safety to help a stranger. Marcus's medical training was evident as he quickly triaged Fenris's injuries. The plasma burn to the chest was serious but not immediately life-threatening. The shattered leg was more concerning, with several bone fragments visible through the torn flesh. But it was the internal bleeding that posed the greatest danger. "I'm not going to lie to you," Marcus said as he applied pressure bandages and injected stimulants from his field kit. "You're in bad shape. I can stabilize you, but you need real medical attention soon or you're going to die." "My unit," Fenris whispered. "They left me." Marcus's expression hardened. "Yeah, I saw them loading up their transports. Counted heads as they left. They knew someone was missing. Too much trouble, Fenris explained, his voice growing stronger as the stimulants took effect. Not worth the resources. That's the coalition for you, Marcus said bitterly. All talk about unity and brotherhood, but when it comes down to it, some lives are worth more than others. As Marcus worked, Fenris studied the human's face. There was anger there, but also a deep sadness that spoke of personal loss. You served with them? 3 tours, Marcus confirmed. Lost too many good people because some coalition officer decided they were acceptable casualties in the bigger picture. Marcus finished applying the bandages and began setting up a portable 4-drip. The good news is that your people heal fast. The stimulants should keep you going long enough for me to get you somewhere safe. Why should you care? Fenris asked. Your species has no reason to help the coalition. Marcus was quiet for a moment as he checked the 4-line. Maybe not. But you're not the coalition. You're just a soldier who got dealt a bad hand. And, besides, he added with a slight smile, I've always had a soft spot for the underdog. As the 4 fluids began to flow into Fenris's system, the werewolf felt his strength returning slightly. Not enough to fight, but enough to think more clearly. Where will you take me? I've got a ship about 2 clicks north of here, Marcus explained. Nothing fancy, but it's got a decent medical bay. From there, we can figure out our next move. We? Fenris was surprised by the pronoun. Unless you've got somewhere else to be, Marcus said with a shrug. Far as I can tell, your coalition friends have written you off. That means you're officially dead, which in this galaxy, is sometimes the best thing to be. Fenris considered this. Marcus was right, the coalition would list him as killed in action and move on. His pack on Luna Prime would mourn him and forget. His service record would be filed away and forgotten. In a strange way, being abandoned had given him a freedom he had never possessed while wearing the coalition uniform. But it also meant he was truly alone for the first time in his adult life. Werewolves were pack creatures by nature, and the coalition military had served as a surrogate family for 6 years. Now that was gone, and he wasn't sure how to function without it. What do you get out of this? Fenris asked. Marcus finished packing his medical gear and shouldered his rifle. Right now? The satisfaction of knowing I did the right thing. Later? Maybe a partner who knows the galaxy better than I do. Partner? I'll explain once we get you patched up properly, Marcus said. For now, we need to move. This area won't stay quiet for long. Marcus rigged a travois from salvaged materials and carefully loaded Fenris onto it. The werewolf bit back groans of pain as the makeshift stretcher jolted over the rough ground, but he understood the necessity of speed. Rebel patrols would be sweeping the area soon, looking for survivors and salvageable equipment. As they moved through the alien landscape, Fenris found himself studying his unlikely rescuer. Marcus moved with the practiced efficiency of a veteran, constantly scanning for threats while maintaining a pace that was quick enough to minimize their exposure but slow enough to avoid jostling his patient unnecessarily. His equipment was well maintained despite its obvious age, and his tactical awareness was impressive for someone from a supposedly primitive species. How long were you coalition? Fenris asked, partly to distract himself from the pain and partly because he was genuinely curious. 8 years total, Marcus replied without slowing his pace. Started as a field medic, worked my way up to senior surgical technician. Saw action in the Rim Wars, the Hegemony Rebellion, and half a dozen smaller conflicts you've probably never heard of. What made you leave? Marcus's grip tightened on the travois handles. Lost a patient. Good kid, Centauri volunteer who joined up to support his family back home. Took shrapnel to the abdomen during a rebel ambush. Completely treatable injury if I'd had the right supplies. He paused in his story, navigating around a crater left by an artillery strike. But command had decided that medical supplies took up too much transport space. More efficient to carry extra ammunition and let the wounded make do with basic field kits. Kid bled out in my arms while I had crates of bullets I couldn't use to save him. Fenris understood. The coalition military was built on the principle of calculated sacrifice, the idea that individual lives could be weighed against strategic objectives and found wanting. It was a harsh reality that most soldiers accepted as necessary, but it was also one that ate away at the soul over time. That's when you went freelance? That's when I realized that the coalition's idea of the greater good and mine weren't compatible, Marcus confirmed. I put in for discharge as soon as my contract was up and never looked back. They walked in silence for a while after that, each lost in their own thoughts. Fenris was beginning to understand why this human had been willing to help him. Marcus had seen the same casual cruelty that had led to Fenris being abandoned, and had chosen to reject it in favor of something more personal and immediate. As they crested a small hill, Marcus's ship came into view. It was indeed nothing fancy, a modified cargo hauler that had seen better decades, with mismatched hull plates and engine housings that suggested extensive jury rigging. But it was space-worthy, and, more importantly, it was freedom. "Home sweet home," Marcus said with obvious affection for the battered vessel. "She's not much to look at, but she's fast, reliable, and completely off the galactic registry. Perfect for someone who wants to stay under the radar." As they approached the ship, its cargo ramp lowered with a grinding mechanical sound that spoke of deferred maintenance. Marcus pulled the travois up the ramp and into the ship's hold, which had been converted into a combination workshop and living space. Medical equipment shared space with weapon repair tools and navigation computers, all arranged with the efficient use of space that marked an experienced spacer. "Let's get you into the medical bay," Marcus said, transferring Fenris from the travois to a proper medical table. "I want to run some scans and see what we're really dealing with." The ship's medical facilities were more sophisticated than Fenris had expected from their external appearance. Marcus obviously took his medical practice seriously, even if he was no longer bound by coalition regulations. As diagnostic scanners hummed to life around him, Fenris felt a strange sense of security that he hadn't experienced since his abandonment. "Well, the good news is that you're going to live," Marcus announced after reviewing the scan results. "The bad news is that it's going to take some time and effort to get you back to fighting shape." "How much time? With your species' healing rate?" 2 weeks for the bones to knit properly, another week for the soft tissue damage to fully heal. "But that's assuming complete rest and proper nutrition." Fenris nodded slowly. 3 weeks was a long time to impose on someone's hospitality, especially someone who barely knew him. "I can pay you," he offered. "I have savings, not interested in your money," Marcus interrupted. "But I might be interested in a different kind of arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down beside the medical table. "I've been working solo for 5 years now, taking whatever jobs pay well enough to keep this bucket of bolts flying. Mostly it's been courier work, some light salvage, the occasional passenger transport. Nothing too exciting, but it pays the bills. But I've been thinking it might be time to aim higher. There are opportunities out there for someone with the right skills and connections. Problem is, most of the really profitable work requires a team." Fenris was beginning to see where this was heading. "You want me to join your crew?" "I want us to be partners," Marcus corrected. "Equal shares, equal say in what jobs we take. You bring military training and combat experience to the table. I bring medical skills and ship operations. Together, we might be able to make something better than either of us could manage alone." It was a tempting offer, especially since Fenris had few alternatives. But it also represented a complete break from everything he had known for the past 6 years. The coalition military had provided structure, purpose, and a clear chain of command. Working as a freelancer would require him to make decisions he had never been responsible for before. "What kind of work are you thinking about?" he asked. "Security consulting, extraction missions, maybe some exploration work in the Outer Rim. Nothing illegal, but nothing that would put us back on the coalition's radar either." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying Fenris's expression. "Look, I'm not going to pressure you into anything. You've been through enough trauma for one day. Take the time you need to heal, think about what you want to do next. If you decide you'd rather try to rejoin the coalition or find your way back to your homeworld, I'll help you do that. And if I decide to stay?" Then, we become partners and see what kind of trouble we can get into together. Fenris closed his eyes and tried to imagine what such a life might be like. No superior officers to answer to, no military regulations to follow, no predetermined mission parameters to constrain his actions. It was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. When he opened his eyes again, Marcus was preparing medication for his 4-line. The human worked with quiet competence, checking dosages and monitoring vital signs with the same attention to detail that had marked his battlefield rescue. "Why did you really help me?" Fenris asked. Marcus paused in his preparations. "I told you, no, the real reason. You could have walked past and never looked back. No one would have blamed you." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "My last year with the Coalition, I was assigned to a mobile surgical unit supporting frontline operations. We treated everyone: Coalition forces, allied species, even rebel prisoners when we could manage it. Our commanding officer was a Terran named Colonel Harrison, old-school military who believed that a medic's duty was to preserve life regardless of politics." Marcus attached a new medication bag to the 4-stand and adjusted the flow rate. "During one particularly nasty engagement, we took casualties from a Coalition unit that had been ambushed while escorting refugees. Among the wounded was a Makari child who had been caught in the crossfire. Maybe 8 years old by their species reckoning, barely more than a baby." "What happened?" "The kid was in bad shape, internal bleeding, multiple fractures, the works. But treatable if we'd had the right supplies. Problem was, Command had decided that treating non-coalition citizens was a waste of resources. They ordered us to focus on military personnel only." Marcus's hands stilled on the medical equipment. Colonel Harrison refused the order. Said that a wounded child was a wounded child, regardless of species or citizenship. He performed the surgery himself while I assisted, using supplies that were supposed to be reserved for Coalition forces. "Did the child survive?" "She did. Made a full recovery and was reunited with her family at the refugee camp." Marcus's expression darkened. Colonel Harrison was court-martialed for disobeying orders and wasting military resources. Stripped of rank and dishonorably discharged. Last I heard, he was working as a civilian doctor on some backwater colony world. Fenris began to understand. "You helped me because he would have helped me." "I helped you because it was the right thing to do," Marcus corrected. "Same reason Harrison helped that Makari child. When you start weighing lives against military efficiency, you stop being a healer and start being just another cog in the war machine." The medication was beginning to take effect, and Fenris felt drowsiness creeping over him. But he fought it off long enough to ask one more question. "What happened to the unit that abandoned me?" Marcus checked his watch and made a note on a medical chart. "According to the communications chatter I monitored, they made it back to base safely. Filed a report listing you as killed in action with body unrecoverable. Your commanding officer will probably get a commendation for keeping casualties to a minimum." The bitter irony of it wasn't lost on Fenris. His sacrifice would become another line item in someone else's promotion packet, while the soldiers who had walked past his dying body would sleep soundly knowing they had followed orders. But, as the medication finally pulled him toward unconsciousness, Fenris found that his anger was fading. Being abandoned by the Coalition had hurt, but it had also revealed something important about the nature of loyalty and brotherhood. True loyalty wasn't about following orders or maintaining unit cohesion. It was about choosing to help when help was needed, regardless of the cost or convenience. And, in that respect, this human stranger had shown more loyalty in one night than his Coalition comrades had shown in 6 years of service together. Perhaps there was something to be learned from that. Perhaps there was a different kind of life to be lived. As sleep finally claimed him, Fenris's last conscious thought was that maybe being abandoned had been the best thing that had ever happened to him. Fenris woke to the gentle hum of life support systems and the antiseptic smell of medical equipment. For a moment, he was disoriented, his werewolf senses picking up unfamiliar scents and sounds. Then, memory returned: the battle, the abandonment, and the human who had saved his life. Sunlight filtered through a small porthole, indicating that at least one planetary day had passed since Marcus had brought him aboard. Fenris tested his limbs carefully and was surprised to find that the pain had diminished significantly. His enhanced healing factor was working overtime, aided by whatever medications Marcus had administered. "Good, you're awake," came Marcus's voice from across the medical bay. The human was seated at a desk, reviewing what appeared to be star charts and job postings on a portable computer. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Fenris admitted, pushing himself up to a sitting position. "Much better than I expected." "Your species' healing rate is impressive," Marcus noted, making an entry in what Fenris assumed was his medical file. "The bone fractures are already showing signs of calcification, and the soft tissue damage has stabilized." "I'd say you're ahead of schedule." Fenris swung his legs over the side of the medical table, testing his weight on the injured limb. There was still pain, but it was manageable. "How long was I unconscious?" "About 18 hours. You needed the rest." Marcus saved his work and turned to face his patient. "I've been monitoring Coalition communications while you slept. Your former unit made it back to base and filed their report. Officially, you're dead." The werewolf nodded slowly. He had expected as much, but hearing it confirmed still stung. 6 years of service, erased with a few keystrokes in a military database. Any word about memorial services? Standard notification sent to your listed next of kin. Your pack on Luna Prime will receive death benefits and a commendation for your sacrifice. Marcus's tone was neutral, but Fenris could hear the underlying anger. Very efficient. Fenris stood carefully, testing his balance. His body felt strange, lighter somehow, as if a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. "What about rebel activity in this sector?" "Increased patrols, but they haven't found us. This ship's stealth capabilities are better than they look." Marcus gestured toward the porthole. "We're currently in orbit around a gas giant about 6 light-years from where I found you. Completely off the shipping lanes. Safe, then, For now. But we can't stay here indefinitely. Fuel and supplies are limited, and eventually someone is going to notice an unregistered ship loitering in an empty system." Fenris nodded, understanding the implication. It was time to make a decision about his future. The easy path would be to contact Coalition forces and request extraction, claim he had somehow survived and made his way to safety. His combat record was strong enough that they would probably accept the story without too many questions. But the thought of returning to the same military structure that had abandoned him left a bitter taste in his mouth. How could he trust officers who viewed him as expendable? How could he serve alongside soldiers who had walked past his dying body without a second thought? "You mentioned partnership yesterday," Fenris said carefully. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I did. Are you interested?" "I might be. But I need to understand what that would mean. I've spent my entire adult life following orders and military protocols. I'm not sure I know how to function without that structure." "Fair point." Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down, clearly preparing for a lengthy discussion. "Let me tell you what I had in mind." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined his vision for their potential partnership. He had been operating as a freelance contractor for 5 years, taking a variety of jobs from different clients across the galaxy. Most of the work was legitimate courier services, equipment transport, passenger delivery, and occasional security consulting. But there were also opportunities for more lucrative contracts that required military expertise. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Marcus explained. "Corporations need security for their operations in contested systems. Colonies need protection from pirates and raiders. Archaeological teams need escorts when they're working in unexplored regions. All of that pays well if you have the right qualifications." "And you think we have the right qualifications?" "Between your combat experience and my technical skills, we can handle most of what's out there. The key is being selective about our clients and making sure we don't get in over our heads." Fenris was intrigued despite his reservations. The work Marcus described sounded more varied and potentially more rewarding than the repetitive missions he had carried out for the Coalition. What about legal issues? Operating outside military jurisdiction means different rules. That's actually an advantage, Marcus said. Freelance contractors aren't bound by Coalition military regulations. We can choose our own missions, set our own terms, and walk away from any situation we don't like. No one can order us to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. The last comment hit home. Fenris's abandonment had been perfectly legal under Coalition military law. Commanders were required to make tactical decisions based on overall mission success, even if that meant leaving wounded soldiers behind. As a freelancer, he would never be placed in that position again. What about equipment? Weapons, armor, transportation? Marcus gestured around the medical bay. This ship is our mobile base of operations. She's not much to look at, but she's fast, well armed for her size, and completely off the books. I've got a full armory in the cargo hold, plus enough spare parts to keep us running for months. How do you find clients? Network of contacts I've built up over the years. Former Coalition personnel who've gone freelance, corporate executives who need deniable assets, colony administrators who can't wait for official help. Word of mouth is the most reliable advertising in this business. Fenris considered all of this carefully. It was a complete departure from everything he had known, but it was also an opportunity to build something new. Something that wouldn't abandon him when things got difficult. Equal partnership, he asked. Equal shares of profits, equal say in what jobs we take, equal responsibility for the consequences. Neither of us gives orders to the other, we discuss options and make decisions together. That was perhaps the most appealing aspect of Marcus's offer. After years of rigid military hierarchy, the idea of being an equal partner rather than a subordinate was almost intoxicating. What's our first move if I agree? Marcus smiled, apparently sensing that Fenris was leaning toward accepting. I've got a potential contract that could serve as a good test run. Nothing too dangerous, but it would give us a chance to see how we work together. He pulled up a file on his computer and turned the screen so Fenris could see it. The contract details showed a request for escort services from a research team that was planning to survey archaeological sites in the Deneb sector. Dr. Sarah Mitchell is a xenoarchaeologist from the University of New Terra, Marcus explained. She's putting together an expedition to investigate ruins on 3 different worlds in an unclaimed system. The sites were discovered by a survey drone about 6 months ago, but the region has been experiencing increased pirate activity. Fenris studied the contract details. The pay was substantial enough to cover ship expenses and provide a healthy profit for both of them. The timeline was reasonable, with the expedition expected to last about 3 weeks. Most importantly, the work was clearly legitimate and posed no legal complications. What makes her think pirates will be a problem? 2 other research teams have been attacked in nearby systems over the past month. In both cases, the pirates seemed more interested in stealing data and artifacts than taking prisoners or cargo. Someone is targeting archaeological expeditions specifically. Any idea who? Marcus shrugged. Could be anyone. Black market collectors pay top dollar for certain types of alien artifacts. Or it might be a rival research institution trying to secure exclusive access to important sites. Either way, Dr. Mitchell wants professional protection for her team. The mission appealed to Fenris for several reasons. It was clearly legitimate work that would help protect innocent civilians. It would allow him to use his military training for a constructive purpose. And it offered a chance to see parts of the galaxy he had never visited during his Coalition service. When does she want to leave? In 4 days. She's already assembled her research team and equipment, but she needs to know about security arrangements before finalizing her departure schedule. 4 days would give Fenris time to fully recover from his injuries and familiarize himself with Marcus's equipment and procedures. It was a reasonable timeline that didn't rush them into an unprepared mission. All right, Fenris said finally. I'm interested. But I want to meet with this Dr. Mitchell before we commit to anything. I need to understand exactly what we're protecting and what kind of threats we might face. Marcus grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. She's currently on Kepler Station, about 2 days' travel from here. I've already arranged a meeting for tomorrow afternoon, pending your recovery. You were that confident I'd agree? I was that confident you're smart enough to recognize a good opportunity when you see one, Marcus replied. Plus, I figured a soldier who'd been abandoned by his own unit might be ready for a change of career. Fenris couldn't argue with that logic. The coalition had made it clear that his life was expendable when weighed against tactical convenience. Working with Marcus offered the possibility of something better, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than military hierarchy. Over the next few hours, Marcus gave Fenris a tour of the ship and explained their standard operating procedures. The vessel was larger than it appeared from the outside, with efficient use of space that provided all the amenities needed for extended operations. The cargo hold had been converted into an armory and workshop, containing an impressive array of weapons and equipment that Marcus had acquired over his years as a freelancer. Most of this stuff is surplus coalition gear, Marcus explained as he showed off various weapons systems. Turns out a lot of military equipment becomes lost in transit when soldiers muster out of service. I've got contacts who can provide almost anything we might need. Fenris examined a heavy plasma rifle that was identical to the one he had carried during his coalition service. This is military-grade hardware. How do you avoid legal complications? Freelance contractors are allowed to carry military-grade weapons as long as they're properly licensed and registered, Marcus said. It's one of the few advantages of working outside the military, we can actually use the good stuff instead of being limited to standard-issue equipment. The ship's computer systems were equally impressive, with navigation databases that included detailed information about systems throughout the galaxy. Marcus had clearly invested considerable resources in ensuring their mobile base was as capable as possible. How long did it take you to set all this up? Fenris asked. About 3 years of steady work, Marcus admitted. I started with a basic cargo hauler and upgraded systems as I could afford them. It's not cheap, but independence is worth the investment. That evening, as they traveled toward Kepler Station, Fenris found himself reflecting on the dramatic changes in his circumstances. 48 hours ago, he had been a coalition soldier following orders and trusting his life to military commanders who viewed him as expendable. Now he was planning to become an independent contractor with an equal voice in his own destiny. The transformation was both liberating and terrifying. Military service had provided structure and purpose, even if it had ultimately proven unreliable. Freelance work would offer freedom but also uncertainty. There would be no guaranteed paychecks, no military support networks, and no clear chain of command to provide guidance during difficult situations. But there would also be no superior officers treating him as expendable. No military regulations that placed tactical objectives above individual lives. No comrades who would abandon him when helping became inconvenient. Marcus spent the evening going over potential contract terms and explaining the business aspects of freelance contracting. Fenris was surprised to learn how complex the legal and financial arrangements could be. Military service had sheltered him from most of these concerns. The coalition handled contracts, payments, equipment procurement, and legal compliance. As a freelancer, he would need to understand all of these areas himself. It's a lot to learn, Marcus acknowledged when he saw Fenris's expression. But you don't have to master everything immediately. I've been handling the business side for years, so I can teach you as we go. What if we don't work well together? Fenris asked. Partnership is very different from military unit cohesion. Then, we figure out what's not working and fix it, or we dissolve the partnership amicably and go our separate ways, Marcus said matter-of-factly. That's the beauty of being freelancers, we're not locked into anything we don't want to continue. The casual approach to commitment was another adjustment Fenris would need to make. Military service involved multi-year contracts with severe penalties for early termination. The idea that he could simply walk away if things weren't working out was almost unthinkable after years of rigid military obligation. As they approached Kepler Station the next day, Fenris got his first look at the massive commercial hub that served as a neutral meeting ground for traders, contractors, and travelers from across the galaxy. The station was enormous, easily 10 kilometers in length and bristling with docking bays, commercial districts, and residential areas that housed nearly 1 million permanent residents. "Welcome to the crossroads of the galaxy," Marcus said as they requested docking clearance. "If you can't find it on Kepler Station, it probably doesn't exist." The station's diversity was immediately apparent as their ship was guided to a docking berth. Vessels of every conceivable design and origin were moored at neighboring slips, coalition military transports, corporate cargo haulers, private yachts, and ships of alien design that Fenris didn't recognize. It was a visual reminder that the galaxy was much larger and more complex than the narrow military perspective he had grown accustomed to. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was waiting for them at the station's central meeting complex, and Fenris was immediately impressed by her professionalism. She was a human in her early 40s, with the kind of precise demeanor that marked a serious academic. Her research credentials were impeccable, and she had clearly done her homework on both Marcus and the security challenges her expedition might face. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," she said after Marcus made introductions. "I understand you're new to the contracting business, Mr. Fenris." "I am," Fenris confirmed. "But my military experience is extensive, and I'm committed to ensuring your team's safety." Dr. Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Your coalition service record is impressive." Mr. Chen provided me with the details he had access to. 6 years of frontline service with commendations for courage under fire. Fenris shot a questioning look at Marcus, who shrugged. "Public records," he explained. "Anyone can access basic service information through military databases." "What I need to know," Dr. Mitchell continued, "is whether you're prepared for the kind of protection work this expedition requires. We're not talking about direct military engagement. We need professionals who can anticipate threats, implement preventive security measures, and handle problems with minimal disruption to our research activities." It was a fair question, and one that Fenris had been asking himself. Military combat was very different from security consulting, requiring a different mindset and skill set. But he was confident that his training and experience were adaptable. "I understand the difference between military operations and civilian protection," he said. "My role would be to assess threats, implement security protocols, and ensure your team can focus on their research without worrying about external dangers." Dr. Mitchell seemed satisfied with his answer and began outlining the specifics of their expedition. The 3 archaeological sites they planned to visit were located in the Kepler 442 system, a remote region that had only recently been surveyed. Initial drone reconnaissance had identified ruins that appeared to date back several thousand years, with architecture that didn't match any known alien civilization. "The potential scientific value is enormous," Dr. Mitchell explained. "If these ruins represent a previously unknown spacefaring civilization, it could revolutionize our understanding of galactic history." "What makes you think pirates would be interested in archaeological sites?" Fenris asked. "Several factors," Dr. Mitchell replied, pulling up holographic displays that showed the survey data. "First, ancient alien artifacts are extremely valuable on the black market. Collectors will pay millions for genuine alien technology, especially if it's from an unknown civilization." She manipulated the display to show detailed scans of the ruins. "Second, there's increasing evidence that some of these ancient sites contain information storage devices, databases, archives, that kind of thing. Corporate intelligence services are very interested in acquiring any technological or scientific information they can find." Marcus leaned forward, studying the holographic ruins. "Any indication of what this particular civilization might have left behind?" "That's what makes this expedition so important," Dr. Mitchell said. "The architectural style is completely unique, and our preliminary scans have detected energy signatures that suggest active technological systems. We could be looking at a fully operational ancient facility." The implications were staggering. Most archaeological sites contained only dead ruins, buildings, and artifacts left behind by extinct civilizations. But if Dr. Mitchell was right, they might be dealing with active alien technology that had been operating autonomously for thousands of years. "How many people are in your research team?" Fenris asked, already thinking about security requirements. 8 specialists plus myself, Dr. Mitchell replied. Xenoarchaeologists, linguists, engineers, and computer specialists. All civilians with no combat training. 9 non-combatants in a region known for pirate activity, investigating sites that could contain priceless alien technology. It was exactly the kind of target that would attract criminal attention, and exactly the kind of mission that required professional security. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" Marcus asked. 3 weeks total, Dr. Mitchell said. 1 week at each site, with travel time between locations. We'll need to establish a temporary base camp at each site while we conduct our surveys. Fenris was already formulating security protocols in his mind. 3 separate locations meant 3 separate threat assessments and security setups. Each site would need perimeter monitoring, early warning systems, and contingency plans for rapid evacuation if necessary. "Equipment and transportation?" he asked. "We have our own research vessel, a converted exploration ship with full laboratory facilities," Dr. Mitchell explained. "But it's not armed or armored. We need security professionals who can provide both personnel protection and defensive capabilities for our ship." That settled it for Fenris. This was exactly the kind of legitimate, worthwhile work he wanted to be involved in. Dr. Mitchell's team was conducting important scientific research that could benefit all galactic civilization. Protecting them from pirates and criminals was not only profitable but morally satisfying. "I think we can help you," Fenris said, looking at Marcus for confirmation. Marcus nodded. "We accept the contract. When do you want to leave?" "Day after tomorrow," Dr. Mitchell replied. "That will give us time to finalize our equipment manifests and coordinate our departure schedules." As they worked out the details of payment and operational procedures, Fenris found himself looking forward to their first mission as partners. It was challenging work with clear objectives and obvious value. More importantly, it represented a clean break from his past and the beginning of a new phase in his life. After Dr. Mitchell left to make her final preparations, Marcus and Fenris remained in the station's meeting room to discuss their own plans. "So," Marcus said, "ready to become a freelance contractor?" Fenris nodded slowly. "Ready to try, anyway. This is all new territory for me." "That's what makes it interesting," Marcus replied. "We're building something together, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals. No superior officers, no military bureaucracy, no one treating us like expendable assets. Just us and whatever challenges the galaxy throws at us." "Just us," Marcus confirmed. "And, I have to say, I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish together." As they prepared to return to their ship and begin preparations for their first mission, Fenris reflected on the irony of his situation. Being abandoned by the Coalition had been the worst moment of his military career, but it had also opened the door to possibilities he had never imagined. For the first time in years, he was truly looking forward to the future. The Kepler 442 system hung in the void like a collection of scattered jewels, 3 worlds orbiting a yellow star that cast long shadows across ancient alien ruins. Dr. Mitchell's research vessel, the Academic Explorer, had been their home for the past 2 weeks as they systematically investigated each archaeological site. Fenris stood in the ship's observation deck, watching as their scanners painted detailed images of the third and final dig site on his tactical display. 2 weeks of successful security operations had given him confidence in his new role as a freelance contractor, but he had also learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. And, right now, something definitely felt wrong. "Picking up anything on long-range sensors?" Marcus asked, joining him at the display. "Nothing specific," Fenris replied, adjusting the scanner settings to increase sensitivity. "But I've got that feeling between my shoulder blades that says we're being watched." Marcus nodded grimly. They had both developed an almost supernatural awareness of danger during their military service, and Fenris's werewolf senses made him particularly sensitive to potential threats. If he was feeling uneasy, there was probably a good reason for it. "Could be pirates finally caught up with us," Marcus suggested. "We've been transmitting research data back to the university regularly. Anyone monitoring communications could have tracked our location." The first 2 dig sites had yielded remarkable discoveries, intact alien technology that appeared to be thousands of years old but was still functional. Dr. Mitchell's team had been ecstatic about their findings, but Fenris had been increasingly concerned about operational security. News of their discoveries had spread quickly through academic channels, and black market collectors were notorious for monitoring university communications. Dr. Mitchell, Fenris called to the expedition leader, who was reviewing excavation reports at a nearby workstation. "I need to speak with you about security concerns." Dr. Mitchell looked up from her data tablets, noting the serious expression on both contractors' faces. Over the past 2 weeks, she had learned to trust their professional judgment about potential threats. "What's the situation?" she asked, moving to join them at the sensor display. "We may have unwanted company," Fenris explained. "I can't identify any specific threats, but every instinct I have is telling me we're walking into a trap." "Could it be related to our discoveries?" Dr. Mitchell asked. Marcus pulled up a communication log on his portable computer. "Your team has been transmitting detailed reports about each find back to the university. Those transmissions are encrypted, but anyone with the right equipment could intercept and decode them." "You think someone knows what we've found?" "I think the galaxy is full of people who would kill for the kind of technology we've been uncovering," Fenris said bluntly. "Ancient alien tech is worth more than most planets' annual budgets." Dr. Mitchell's expression grew troubled. She had been so focused on the scientific value of their discoveries that she hadn't fully considered the criminal implications. "What do you recommend?" Fenris studied the tactical display, considering their options. The third dig site was located on a small moon orbiting the system's gas giant, with limited approaches and no natural cover for their ship. If pirates were planning an ambush, this would be the perfect location for it. "We go in prepared for trouble," he decided. "Full defensive protocols, constant sensor sweeps, and a ready escape plan if things go bad." "Will that be enough?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "Depends on what kind of opposition we're facing," Marcus replied. "If it's just opportunistic pirates, we should be fine. But if someone has been specifically tracking this expedition..." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. A well-organized criminal operation with inside information about their discoveries could pose a serious threat to the lightly armed research vessel. As the academic explorer approached the third dig site, Fenris implemented the most stringent security measures he could manage with their limited resources. All non-essential personnel were confined to protected areas of the ship, sensor arrays were set to maximum sensitivity, and their few defensive systems were brought online and ready for immediate use. The moon itself was a barren rock barely 100 kilometers in diameter, with the alien ruins located in a crater near the equator. Initial scans confirmed what their long-range probes had detected: another intact facility that appeared to be part of the same civilization they had been studying. "Landing zone looks clear," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the academic explorer's pilot and Marcus's former coalition colleague. "No signs of surface activity or hidden installations." Fenris wasn't entirely convinced. "Maintain full sensor sweeps and keep the engines warm," he instructed. "If we need to leave quickly, I don't want any delays." As the research team began setting up their equipment at the dig site, Fenris and Marcus established a perimeter and implemented their standard security protocols. Motion sensors, automated warning systems, and concealed observation posts provided early warning of any approaching threats. For the first few hours, everything proceeded normally. Dr. Mitchell's team worked methodically to uncover and document the alien ruins, while Fenris and Marcus maintained constant vigilance for signs of trouble. The facility they were excavating appeared to be some kind of command center, with intact computer systems and data storage devices that had somehow survived millennia of abandonment. It was Dr. Ellen Torres, the expedition's linguistics specialist, who made the discovery that changed everything. "Dr. Mitchell," Torres called excitedly from her position near the central ruins, "you need to see this. The inscriptions here aren't just decorative, they're functional interfaces. And I think I figured out how to activate them." Fenris felt his danger sense spike immediately. "Wait," he called, but Torres had already begun manipulating the alien controls. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire facility began to glow with soft blue light as dormant systems came online for the first time in thousands of years. Holographic displays materialized in the air above the ruins, showing star maps and data streams in an alien language that slowly began shifting to recognizable symbols. "It's some kind of automated translation protocol," Torres breathed in amazement. The system is learning our language in real time. Dr. Mitchell's team gathered around the activated displays, their scientific excitement overwhelming their caution. But Fenris was focused on his sensors, which were suddenly showing multiple contacts approaching their position from space. Marcus, he called sharply, we've got company. 3 ships, coming in fast from the outer system. Marcus immediately moved to the communication station they had established at the dig site. Academic Explorer, this is base camp. We have incoming contacts, possibly hostile. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Confirmed, came Kim's voice over the comm system. I'm seeing them too. Configuration matches known pirate vessel designs. Fenris was already issuing orders to Dr. Mitchell's team. Everyone pack your essential data and prepare to leave immediately. This site is compromised. But Dr. Mitchell was staring at the holographic displays with fascination. Fenris, look at this. The system is showing us star charts that predate any known civilization. This could be the discovery of the century. It won't matter if we're dead, Fenris replied bluntly. We need to evacuate now. The approaching ships were still several hours away at their current speed, but Fenris knew that organized pirates often coordinated their attacks with ground forces. There could be infiltration teams already on the surface, moving to surround the dig site. His suspicions were confirmed moments later when his perimeter sensors detected multiple contacts approaching from the far side of the crater. At least a dozen armed individuals were moving toward their position with military precision. Ground contacts, he announced, drawing his weapon. We're surrounded. Marcus was already at the communication station, trying to coordinate with the academic explorer. Kim, what's your status? Can you provide fire support? Negative, came the pilot's reply. The approaching ships are jamming our targeting systems. I can extract the team, but I can't engage the ground forces effectively. Fenris quickly assessed their situation. Dr. Mitchell's team was exposed in the open crater with minimal cover, facing an unknown number of hostiles with superior firepower. The academic explorer was being threatened by enemy ships that outgunned and outnumbered their single research vessel. Their only advantage was the defensive positions he and Marcus had prepared. Torres, can you shut down the alien systems? He asked the linguist. I'm not sure how, Torres replied, still manipulating the holographic controls. The interface is incredibly complex. Then, leave it, Fenris decided. Everyone moved to the prepared defensive positions. Marcus, take the research team and establish a perimeter at Rally Point Alpha. I'll cover our withdrawal. As the team began moving toward the defensive positions Fenris had prepared, he could see armed figures appearing at the crater rim. Their equipment and tactics identified them as professional soldiers rather than typical pirates. This was a well-organized military operation designed to capture the archaeological site and its discoveries. The first shots came from multiple directions as the attackers attempted to pin down the research team in the open crater. Fenris returned fire with disciplined bursts from his heavy plasma rifle, using the alien ruins for cover while Marcus guided the civilians to safety. Academic Explorer, Marcus called over the comm, we need immediate extraction. Landing zone is hot. On my way, Kim responded. ETA 3 minutes. 3 minutes might as well have been 3 hours under the current circumstances. The attackers were advancing from multiple directions, using professional fire and movement tactics that indicated serious military training. Fenris could see at least 20 hostiles, all equipped with military-grade weapons and armor. But, as he fought to protect Dr. Mitchell's team, Fenris realized something that gave him hope. The attackers were being careful not to damage the alien facility. Their weapons fire was precisely directed to avoid hitting the ruins or the activated computer systems. They wanted the archaeological discovery intact, which limited their tactical options. Marcus, he called, they're not trying to destroy the site. We can use the ruins for cover. Marcus immediately understood and began repositioning the research team among the alien structures. The ancient architecture was surprisingly resilient, providing excellent protection against energy weapons while allowing the defenders to maintain good fields of fire. The sound of approaching engines announced the arrival of the academic explorer, but Fenris could see enemy aircraft moving to intercept. The research vessel was caught between hostile ships in orbit and ground-based anti-aircraft systems that the attackers had positioned around the crater. "This is Academic Explorer," Kim's voice came over the calm with obvious strain. "Taking fire from multiple sources. I can't maintain position much longer." Fenris made a tactical decision that would have been impossible under coalition military regulations. Instead of following standard evacuation procedures, he was going to improvise. "Torres," he called to the linguist, who was still working with the alien computer systems, "can you access any defensive systems? Weapons, shields, anything that might help us?" "I'm trying," Torres replied, manipulating holographic controls with increasing desperation. "The interface is starting to make sense, but there are so many subsystems." Suddenly, the alien facility's lighting changed from blue to red, and new holographic displays materialized around the ruins. Torres had apparently accessed some kind of security protocol, because energy barriers began forming around the archaeological site. "Defensive shields are online," Torres announced with amazement. "The facility has automated defense systems that are still functional." The energy barriers deflected the attackers' weapons fire, giving the research team breathing room to regroup and plan their next move. But Fenris knew the shields wouldn't hold indefinitely. Ancient alien technology or not, they were still dealing with systems that had been dormant for thousands of years. "Marcus, we need to get creative," he said. "Standard extraction isn't going to work with those ships controlling orbital space." Marcus nodded grimly. "I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." "Tell me." "The facility's computer systems are incredibly advanced. If Torres can figure out how to interface with them properly, we might be able to access navigation databases, star charts, maybe even communication systems." Fenris understood immediately. "You want to use alien technology to call for help. The Coalition has standing orders to investigate any reports of active alien technology," Marcus explained. "If we can send a broad-spectrum distress signal claiming we've discovered operational ancient systems, they'll dispatch a task force immediately." It was a brilliant plan with one major flaw. "The Coalition thinks I'm dead," Fenris pointed out. "If they find me here, there are going to be questions I can't answer." "Then, we'll deal with that when the time comes," Marcus replied. "Right now, our priority is keeping everyone alive." Fenris nodded reluctantly. Personal complications would have to wait. Dr. Mitchell's team needed protection, and the Coalition was their best hope for rescue. "Torres, can you access the facility's communication systems?" "I think so," the linguist replied, manipulating the alien controls with growing confidence. "The translation protocol is becoming more sophisticated. I'm starting to understand the basic interface structure." Over the next few minutes, Torres worked frantically to access the alien communication systems while Fenris and Marcus maintained a defensive perimeter. The attackers had pulled back slightly after the energy shields activated, but they were clearly regrouping for a more systematic assault. "Got it," Torres announced finally. "I've accessed what appears to be a long-range communication array. It's incredibly powerful. I think it can transmit across the entire galaxy." "Send a Coalition distress signal," Marcus instructed. "Full emergency protocols. Tell them we've discovered active alien technology and are under attack by hostile forces." As Torres worked to transmit their distress call, Fenris monitored the tactical situation. The attackers were setting up heavy weapons that would probably be capable of penetrating the alien energy shields. They had perhaps minutes before the facility's defenses were overwhelmed. "Signal transmitted," Torres reported. "But I don't know if anyone will receive it in time to help us." Fenris was about to respond when his enhanced hearing picked up a new sound, the distinctive whine of Coalition military engines approaching at high speed. The distress signal had worked better than expected. "Incoming Coalition forces," he announced, checking his sensors. "Multiple ships, heavy cruiser class." The effect on the attacking forces was immediate and dramatic. Professional soldiers they might be, but none of them wanted to face a Coalition task force in direct combat. Within minutes, the ground assault teams were falling back toward their extraction points while their orbiting ships moved to disengage. But, as the first coalition vessels entered the system, Fenris realized that his personal situation had just become much more complicated. In a few minutes, he would be face to face with officers who believed he was dead, and explanations would definitely be required. "Marcus," he said quietly, "we need to get our story straight before they arrive." Marcus nodded grimly. "I've been thinking about that. We tell them the truth, mostly. You survived your injuries and made it to my ship, but you were too badly wounded to contact coalition forces immediately. By the time you recovered, you had decided to try freelance contracting instead of returning to military service. Will they accept that? They'll have to. You're not technically AWOL since you were listed as killed in action. And your presence here proves you're still loyal to coalition interests." The first coalition dropships were already landing near the archaeological site as the attacking forces completed their withdrawal. Fenris watched familiar military procedures unfold as coalition marines secured the area and began establishing a perimeter. Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Hayes, the commanding officer of the coalition task force, was a professional soldier with 20 years of experience and the kind of efficient demeanor that marked effective field commanders. She listened without comment as Marcus explained their presence at the archaeological site and the circumstances that had led to the distress call. "So you're telling me," she said finally, "that a supposedly dead coalition soldier and a freelance contractor stumbled onto the most significant archaeological discovery in galactic history?" "That's an accurate summary," Marcus confirmed. Colonel Hayes turned her attention to Fenris, studying his appearance and bearing with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to evaluating soldiers. "According to our records, Sergeant Fenris was killed in action 2 weeks ago during Operation Clearwater." "I was badly wounded and left for dead," Fenris replied carefully. "Mr. Chin found me and provided medical treatment. By the time I recovered, I had decided that civilian contracting offered better opportunities than returning to military service." "And you didn't think to contact coalition forces to report that you had survived?" Fenris met her gaze steadily. "I was officially listed as killed in action. My unit had already moved on without me. I saw no reason to complicate their records or my own future." Colonel Hayes considered this explanation for a long moment. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't technically a lie either. Fenris had indeed been left for dead, and he had indeed decided that freelance contracting was preferable to continued military service. "Well," she said finally, "regardless of the circumstances that brought you here, you've done the coalition a significant service. This archaeological site represents a major scientific discovery, and your protection of the research team has preserved invaluable information." Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, eager to share their findings with official coalition representatives. "Colonel Hayes, the discoveries we've made here could revolutionize our understanding of galactic history. The alien civilization that built these facilities was far more advanced than anything we've encountered before." Over the next several hours, Dr. Mitchell's team briefed the coalition task force on their archaeological findings while Fenris and Marcus provided detailed reports about the attack. The alien technology was indeed remarkable, but what impressed Fenris most was the way Marcus handled the official debriefing. His partner displayed the same professionalism and attention to detail that had marked their security operations, answering questions accurately while steering the conversation away from potentially problematic areas. By the time the debriefing was complete, both of them had been officially cleared of any wrongdoing and thanked for their service to the coalition. "So what happens now?" Fenris asked Colonel Hayes as the official proceedings wound down. "Now the coalition takes over security for this site while Dr. Mitchell's team continues their research," she replied. "As for you two, your contract with the expedition is complete. You're free to go." Fenris nodded, understanding that they were being politely dismissed. The coalition wanted to control access to the alien technology, which meant independent contractors were no longer welcome. But, as they prepared to return to their ship, Dr. Mitchell approached them with a proposal that surprised both partners. "I want to offer you an extended contract," she said without preamble. "The university is planning follow-up expeditions to search for more sites like this one. We need security professionals who understand both the archaeological and military aspects of such operations." "What kind of contract?" Marcus asked. "Long-term consulting arrangement. 6 months initially, with options for extension. You'd be our primary security contractors for all off-world archaeological operations. It was exactly the kind of steady work that could establish their reputation in the freelance contracting business. More importantly, it was legitimate, interesting work that would allow them to build on the success of their first mission together. "We accept," Fenris said, speaking for both of them. As they finalized the details of their new contract with Dr. Mitchell, Fenris reflected on the remarkable changes in his circumstances over the past few weeks. Being abandoned by his coalition unit had seemed like the end of his world, but it had actually been the beginning of something much better. Working with Marcus had taught him that true partnership was based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than military hierarchy. Their success in protecting Dr. Mitchell's expedition proved that they could work effectively together while maintaining their individual strengths and perspectives. Most importantly, Fenris had discovered that there was life beyond military service, meaningful work that didn't require him to surrender his autonomy to superior officers who might view him as expendable. As a freelance contractor, he was free to choose his own missions, set his own standards, and walk away from any situation that violated his personal code of ethics. "So," Marcus said as they prepared to depart for their next assignment, "how does it feel to be officially dead but very much alive?" Fenris smiled, feeling more content than he had in years. "Like a second chance at building the kind of life I actually want to live." "And what kind of life is that?" "One where I get to choose who I fight for and why," Fenris replied. "One where my partners don't abandon me when things get difficult. One where I'm valued for what I contribute rather than how expendable I am." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That sounds like exactly the kind of life worth building." As their ship departed the Kepler 442 system, Fenris looked back at the alien ruins one last time. The Coalition had been willing to abandon him when helping became inconvenient, but a human stranger had risked his own safety to save a wounded alien soldier. It was a lesson about the true nature of loyalty and brotherhood that would guide his choices for years to come. The galaxy was full of opportunities for those brave enough to seize them, and Fenris was ready to discover what adventures lay ahead. Working with Marcus had shown him that partnership based on mutual respect was stronger than any military unit held together by orders and regulations. For the first time in his adult life, Fenris was truly free to determine his own destiny. And that freedom, earned through abandonment and redeemed through courage, was worth more than any military commendation or official recognition. The future was unwritten, and he couldn't wait to see what they would accomplish together.